Hey guys, welcome to today's AMA. I'm your host, Greg Mercer, and today I am joined by Michael and Carolina. How you guys doing?
Doing great. How you doing, Greg?
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us on today's Ask Me Anything session. And thank you guys, the audience, for joining us. If you're not familiar, this is where we are answering all you guys' questions related to our $1 million case study. In this week's episode, we're talking about shipping our goods into Amazon. And that's why we brought on Michael and Carolina. They're from Flexport, who is a freight forwarder, and they're going to help answer any questions that I don't know how to ask or answer. You two just want to introduce you guys yourselves real quickly?
Yeah, definitely. My name is Mike Gallardo. As you mentioned, work at Flexport. Started the Amazon team here at Flexport a couple of years ago. Very excited to help. My job is really to be as helpful as possible and answer questions and empower Amazon sellers with the knowledge so they feel comfortable shipping.
Yeah, I'm Carolina Gomez. I'm an operations associate working with Amazon sellers, so super excited to be here and answer all of your questions.
Fantastic. So, the first question's from BB on YouTube, and they asks, is it required to set up a legal entity like an LLC or a corporation in order to partner with a freight forwarder? I guess you guys can't speak with all freight forwarders, but is a legal entity required to sign up for a Flexport account?
For a Flexport account specifically, yes. So not for all freight forwarders though. Some freight forwarders do work with what's called a sole proprietorship or an individual if you actually haven't registered your business. But on the Flexport side, yes, you do have to be a registered business entity.
Cool. And just so you guys know, you probably heard us talk a little bit about this before, but LLCs are very easy and inexpensive to set up. They come with a lot of legal protections, and it's just a little bit neater way to run your business. So I'm a proponent of them anyway, but thank you guys for that answer. The next question's on another one on YouTube from MDCS Is. Can a freight forwarder deliver door to door?
I think that's fun.
Yeah, of course. We can totally do that. We just need the delivery destination and just a few details as to where it's delivering in case it's a residential warehouse, if it needs any accessorials such as a lift gate, and any appointment required.
Oh, thank you. The next one, another YouTube question. How do I pay customs? Does the DDP shipping take care of this, or is this something that Amazon charges?
That's a great question. So when you work with a freight forwarder, they're going to have a customs broker in-house that's going to be working with you. So the way that works at Flexport is that we look at your product, what the HTS code is, and what the applicable duty is. So we're actually going to outlay those costs for you on your behalf, which basically means we're going to pay them, but then on your invoice from Flexport, you're going to see that duty charge if there is one on there. So then you would be paying us back for that cost.
And could you guys explain real quick what DDP is? There's a few questions related to that in the chat box.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually not super familiar with those, but these are Incoterms. And so it really depends on what you and your supplier agree upon. And so
DDP. So DDP is going to be when your supplier is managing it end to end. So, take a step back. Freight forwarders really are important when your shipment is 200 kilograms or more. Before that, you probably want to stick with your supplier who's going to leverage DHL or UPS to manage that shipment. And then you could, set up your terms to be DDP. So it should be an all-in cost and straightforward for you. If you're working with a freight forwarder, they're not going to have that Incoterm. It's going to be what you have heard of FOB or XWorks. Those are the two main ones. So DDP is what you'd set up with your supplier if your shipment is less than 200 kilograms.
All right. And since we're talking a little bit about Incoterms, for anyone who missed our $1 million case study episode on Tuesday, do you want to just explain the difference real quickly? Because I know it's a popular question, the difference between XWorks and FOB.
Yeah, so the difference between XWorks and FOB really depends on who will take the burden of the origin charges. So in FOB, that stands for freight on board. And so in that case, the supplier will take care of all of those origin charges. In terms of X works, that's going to be the responsibility of our client. So our client will pay origin charges, the freight charges, and all destination charges.
Cool. Thank you very much. Here's one specific for Flexport. It says, does Flexport offer freight forwarding services from the US to Canada?
Not at this time, so not yet. The main trade lane that we serve is going to be Southeast Asia to the United States, to Canada, and then to Europe as well. So those are the main ones. So stuff coming out of China and India, places like Taiwan, to the United States, Canada, or Europe. Those are our major trade lanes that we serve right now.
Cool. Anthony on YouTube is asking us a question about the shipping plan. What plan should I use if I have an odd box with a different quantity? Seems that the case pack doesn't let me add that weird box. I think there's two things you can do here. One, you can just label it as a case pack, and I think you could send in less than, one of them could be less than full, because Amazon does allow like plus or minus 6 or 8% of the volume of goods. The other option you could do is you could just set that up as just a different shipment and either put that amount in the case pack or select the individual packed. Anything that Michael or Caroline you want to add to that, or is that good?
That's good on our end, yeah.
All right, cool. Does Flexport operate in the UK? Another Flexport question.
Yeah, so we have an office in the UK. We actually just opened an office in Germany as well. So if your business is based there, or you're shipping from, say Southeast Asia to Europe, we can definitely help and support those shipments. We would love to partner.
Cool. WSUSA on YouTube. As part of your contract, you had shipping details. Since we don't know the final dimensions and weight of the shipment, should we hold off sending the contract? For this one, I'd say no. It's okay when you're sending your contract to your factory before you order your goods if you don't know what shipping method you're going to use. You can just send that agreement with them and just say the shipping details will follow. I wouldn't let that hold off placing your deposit and getting the production run started with your factory. All right. Yeah. Chris V on YouTube says, can Flexport ship directly to Amazon?
Definitely. Our segment specializes in that, and we can walk you through that delivery into Amazon and just, be your partner in that.
Yeah, and so we can do, as I think it was the first question, end to end. So, whether it's going to your house or a warehouse or straight to Amazon, we can assist you with any types of deliveries. We work with clients that are very large too. So we have the whole United States covered. No matter which Amazon warehouse you get, we got you covered, man.
Awesome. The next one is, can I use SPD, which is small parcel delivery, for delivery of more than 30 boxes? Are there any restrictions on the number of boxes delivered by the SPD method? This is a question I don't know for sure the answer to. I've never tried to create a shipment using SPD that I've hit a max limit on. That being said, if I have a very big shipment, I normally don't do small parcel delivery. Do you guys know if there's any kind of limit in Amazon Seller Central for SPD deliveries?
Yeah, so in my experience, I've had clients ship up to 200 boxes SPD. It really depends on how fast you want that to get there, especially in peak. We do see an increase in people using SPD, but we haven't seen a max right now.
Yeah, okay. The important thing to know is that, during this busy time, SPD, let's say, is 3 to 5 business days, where LTL can be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks for that final delivery. So the most common situation that I see where someone has, a lot of cartons, say 50 to 100 or close to 200, and they go SPD, is if, say, they're running out of inventory, their shipment's coming in, and they need to get that inventory in as quickly as possible so they don't run out of stock, and they don't mind paying that extra delivery.
Great. Andrew on YouTube says, hey guys, thanks for this. Confirm samples and about to place the order. At what point does Amazon identify what warehouse we should be shipping to? I haven't set up a listing yet. So the first step is you are gonna have to set up a listing, because you can't create a shipping plan in Seller Central without a listing first. After you've done create the shipping plan, that's when Amazon will tell you what warehouses to send your goods into. So unfortunately, you can't choose your own warehouses. By inputting your from address, that does help Amazon determine what warehouses to assign to you, but that's at which point that you'll be given your respective warehouses. Keep in mind that you don't have to like finalize your listing. You can just create it by like just putting in your GTIN number, which is like a UPC or EAN. I think you just all else it takes is just like a title and maybe a couple other values. You can just create the listing right then, even though it doesn't have any pictures or any details or anything else, and then you'll just adjust it down the. All right, we've had a few. I think people are excited about the discount code that you guys offered to the Jungle Scout customers. I think we'll try to include a link in that in the chat box right now. But there's a few questions that say, I guess there's quite a few people in the chat box that are already using Flexport. They're curious if it's just for first-time customers or if returning customers could also take advantage of that. Putting you guys on the spot here.
It definitely puts us on the spot, but it's all good. So for that code, it's for your first shipment with Flexport. But if you're listening to the AMA and you haven't used the discount code before, I will honor it. Just make sure to mention Mike Gallardo to get it through, and then I can look into it for you.
Sweet. Thank you very much. We might have just gotten Michael in trouble with his boss, but we do have this recorded, so we have proof that he did say this. All right. Here's a nice just comment from Donald on YouTube. It says, tell Michael thank you so much for the YouTube replies on Tuesday, and thank you to guys at Jungle Scout for all this helpful info. It's great help, and even this dumb Irish kid is learning a lot, LOL. So Michael, thank you very much for responding to this.
Definitely. That's awesome.
Here's a question on YouTube from El Gurali. Is there a max weight limitation for Flexport or potentially for other freight forwarders?
No, the bigger, the better. We can handle any size shipment. The only real weight restriction is that 200 kilograms that I mentioned before. If it's less than 200, our prices won't be competitive for you. It's actually best to use your supplier. But we have clients that are moving, thousands, tens of thousands of shipments a year. So no matter how much you're moving, we're more than happy to help.
Cool. I think one time, one of my products is very heavy, and one thing I actually did run into is I couldn't fill up a container because due to like the volume restrictions, but instead I guess there is like a per container weight restriction, right? But I mean, you guys at that point just split it into multiple containers. Do you remember what the per container weight restriction is?
Ooh, not off the top of my head.
It's very heavy because this is a very, like, think about like shipping in like dumbbells.
Yeah, I don't remember that because I frankly have not come across it yet. So it's you must be shipping very, very heavy products.
Right. Mike Wallet on YouTube says, should we typically go for FOB over EXW to save time/money? Maybe you just want to explain the difference one more time real quick. Yeah.
So FOB means that your supplier is responsible for, of course, making your product, but then getting it to the port in the country that they're based. And it includes a couple more things like clearing, customs in their destination country as well. Whereas X Works, all your supplier has to do is make your product. They don't actually have to move it after that. And that's when your freight forwarder will come in and pick it up. Both work. We can work with both Incoterms. I would suggest FOB, just for the reason that you kind of guarantee that your factory is set up with the export documents. They can, kind of guarantees that they're more established, and they have those local trucking relationships to get it to the port that are going to save you a little bit of money typically. So I would go with FOB if you do get to choose.
Cool. Ram Boogie says, if we ship to the freight forwarder, how do we arrange for an Amazon service provider, pick it up for delivery to the FBA warehouse, and what is the advantage or what is the savings? You guys want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So that's called Amazon LTL or Amazon SPD. So what we'll do as Flexport is we'll bring your cargo into our warehouse. prep it for Amazon, either LTL or small parcel delivery. And what we'll do is, if we have access to your Seller Central account, it's a limited access, and we'll prep the plan with the pallet dimensions, weight, and the cargo ready date, and then dispatch Amazon LTL. So the carrier will pick up within 2 days. So having that access to your Seller Central allows us to do this for you, and takes that weight off of you.
Great, thank you. A few people have asked, including Michelle on YouTube, about costs associated with using a freight forwarder. I know it varies quite a bit, but I know you guys have a few rules of thumb that you can use to kind of estimate different costs for using different shipment methods. Do you remember those off the top of your head?
Yes, I do. And I do want to highlight that this is an estimate to give you kind of a rough idea of what the cost would be. So if it's going to be an air freight shipment, you're looking at $5 per kilogram, roughly. And if it's an ocean shipment, typically, we're seeing, less than container load. That's going to be $450 per CBM. So once you reach out to your supplier, you can ask for the dimensions to get that information, so you can have a ballpark idea of what it would cost.
Cool. There's tons of questions in here about kind of like getting the goods in to Amazon. Do you guys maybe just real quickly want to just give so pretend we have goods sitting in China right now. Do you want to just give like a 1-minute overview of how the whole process works from getting your goods from this factory in China into the Amazon warehouse?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll take it as if it's a less than container ocean shipment. So I know some people get scared about ocean, but I'm going to break it down in a minute just to show you how easy and simple it is. So if you imagine a small ocean shipment, you're going to get taken to a warehouse in China. It's going to be combined with other small shipments and put into a container. That's going to be put on the boat. It's going to go across the ocean, and then once it lands, it's going to clear customs and then be taken to another warehouse in the United States. From there, it's going to be unloaded from that container and staged and prepped for Amazon to pick it up. And then we're going to work with Amazon to make sure that either the truck or the SPD like FedEx is going to come pick it up from the warehouse and then take it to the Amazon fulfillment center that you were given when you created your shipment plan.
Cool. And I think the reason ocean seems scary to some people is, you just kind of like named all these different things here, and it's like can be overwhelmed to think about like, oh man, I have to figure out how to do customs or do this or that or whatever else. And the truth is, like, if you're using a freight forwarder, like for example, I use Flexport, I notify them, hey, I have this new shipment that's about ready. It's going to be ready in like 3 weeks. And, I need to get it into Amazon. And they pretty much from that point handle everything else. They'll need to know some things like how many cartons there are, if it's a full container or a less than container load. Then they handle customs, they handle the rest of the stuff. And then you can work with them to decide how you want to get it like from the warehouse once it lands at port into the Amazon's warehouse. So that's when you can choose whether you want to use like SPD, which is like UPS or FedEx, or if you want to use like a less than truckload. So yeah, hopefully that clarifies kind of the whole process a little bit. It's not as scary as I think what most people think, especially once you're using a freight forwarder, like they kind of hold your hand and walk you through the process.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can even break down just a little bit more. What you really need to let us know is, the size of the shipment, where it's coming from and where it's going to. And then once you book the shipment, we have teams in China that are going to be working with your supplier to arrange that whole piece in China. And then we're working with that team to take over once it's on the ocean and once it gets to the United States as well. So if you have questions, you can communicate with us. But if we need things, we're going to be proactively reaching out and letting you know, hey, here's what we need. Here's why we need it. And then we're also going to give you the schedule too, so you know what to expect. So it really is holding your hand through the process for sure.
David Lane on YouTube says, what if my shipment is very small, 2 boxes of lightweight products? If I'm using FedEx or DHL, are there any concerns versus using a freight forwarder? This, David, sounds like the scenario that you do just want to use an air courier like FedEx or DHL. A freight forwarder can't really compete with just like the prices of sending just like 2 boxes over, 2 lightweight boxes. Anything that I'm missing there, guys?
No, you're like, a bona fide freight forwarder, it sounds like.
All right. Dion says, is there any way to get Amazon to select only one warehouse? Because right now it gives me 3. That screws up my shipping quotas. I was assuming it was one warehouse. Do one of you guys, why don't one of you guys take this question?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one because there is a very specific rule actually that just came out on this that's effective August 31st. And what that rule is, you can see this by going to your Seller Central account, going to the news widget. They really want to start enforcing that the shipment plans are whole and correct. And basically what that means is once you create a shipment plan, you have to move forward and send in what it gives you. And what I mean by that is that, unfortunately, sometimes they will break it out into 3 warehouses. A trick that a lot of people were using, is that they'd only send in the goods for one warehouse, the one that doesn't have to go that far. And then you could just leave the shipment plan open and leave those other 2 legs kind of just hanging out. But you shouldn't be doing that anymore because it could potentially get flagged. And if you want to be compliant with Amazon terms of service, you really need to send in to all 3 warehouses and make sure what you're sending in matches with the shipment plan completely, because they're really trying to kind of close those workarounds.
I know I was guilty of taking advantage of some of those workarounds in the past, so
Yeah.
I have to do the same thing. I'm going to tighten it up a little bit. A question from Facebook. They want to know if Flexport's expanding to India anytime in the near future. Are there any insights you guys can share on that?
We have, we do. Our CEO posted a roadmap. I'm trying to remember because he posted, I think, the next 20 offices that we're going to open. I don't know if India was on there, to be honest, but if you find Ryan Peterson on LinkedIn, he had a post within the last month or so that outlined our expansion plans.
Cool. That sounds overwhelming to open up 20 new offices around the world. So I wish you guys luck.
Thank you.
Chris on YouTube asked, does the freight forwarder require some specific documentation from a seller for duty payments, or all documents are provided by the manufacturer?
So if this is in terms of like customs clearance, we will need like commercial invoice, packing list, because this is going to help us actually clear customs. And from there, we'll pass along any duty or any fees owed to customs.
Great. Midi Ventures on YouTube asks, I'm from Canada, but I sell in both USA and Canada. Would it be more cost effective to ship LTL to USA or Canada first, assuming I only have one shipment? So it sounds like they have one shipment. They're trying to split the goods up to sell part of them in Canada, part of them in the US. You guys have any advice on kind of how they go about doing that in the most cost effective way?
It depends. So on that one, with market rates and how things work, I think the best thing to advise, like off the top of my head, I can't say, hey, this is going to work every single time, you should do it this way. But what you can do is that when you submit a quote, if you give us that information, we're going to be able to tell and look at our marketplace and the rates and consult on what would be the most cost-effective way. So kind of, it depends on a lot of factors, the size of your shipment going to each, and stuff like that. So if you give us that information, we can work with you and find out, hey, this is what we advise you do with this particular shipment.
Cool. Julia Platt says, for FedEx and DHL, what ship from address would we use in Seller Central? And for that, for example, if you're shipping these goods from like overseas, like China, into the Amazon Seller Central distribution centers in the US, it actually doesn't really matter what ship from address you're using, because you can't take advantage of Amazon's lower rates. You can't like print off your labels outside of Seller Central. If you're shipping those inside of the US, then it's important to use whatever ship from address that they would need to pick up the goods from, because you would want to take advantage of Amazon's lower rates with that. Anything I'm forgetting there?
No, you crushed it, man.
All right, here's a good question. What are the biggest lessons learned or mistakes that you guys think beginner FBAers use when shipping shipments over 200 kilograms or large items? Are there any like common mistakes that you're seeing people make?
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh yeah. I feel like one of the biggest mistakes we see is not having properly labeled like cartons with like oversized products, just because that's important. It's also important to note that with Amazon, just because they will assign a specific facility that can take oversized items. In terms of palletization, if it is oversized, this will skew the height or just length of the pallets, and that will also determine like weights in terms of shipping into Amazon. So just things to keep in mind when shipping oversized cartons.
Yeah, and I would say, make it be very intentional about having, the labeling part of the inspection that you have before shipping. I was actually just working with a client because suppliers can get things right, consistently and deliver for you, but all it takes is, a supplier just happened to make one mistake this one time and, put a different SKU in one carton or mislabeled it, to create problems where your account could get dinged. And the best possible way to protect yourself against that is to have your inspection company like Topwin or VTrust come in and audit the labels of the cartons and the units inside, and to do that with every single shipment that you send in. So I would say that's number one for me. And then two, just making sure to submit a quote for your shipment with your freight forwarder 7 to 10 days before your shipment is ready. That way they can, coordinate, make sure that they can reserve space and everything is going smoothly, especially during peak season right now, because it's very busy. So you want to make sure that that's in there. And then two, I would say like really understand transit time. So how long it takes for the shipment to go from your supplier to the Amazon warehouse as well. And you want to leave yourself some buffer. You don't want to push it to the limits there too. And then the last one I'll give, because I'm on a roll, I got to end with three, is to, speak with your freight forwarder. Make sure that you understand, your HTS code, what the duties are, if, tariffs apply. So you really understand, your profit margins as well, and make sure that your profit margins are healthy in case, these bummer tariff codes come through. You can still have a profitable product. All right, I'm off my soapbox, I promise.
Kind of a funny question from Anthony here. He says, a friend of mine wants to know where Carolina's from.
Yeah, I bet you won't be able to guess. I'm actually from Nicaragua.
Cool. It isn't Ask Me Anything, right? I guess we have to... Nicaragua, right on. All right. A good question from Seth on YouTube says, when using Flexport for an ocean shipment, at what point do you have to pay the balance?
So when your cargo clears customs, we'll be able to share that invoice with you, and we will require payment before delivery to final destination.
Great. Thanks. One from Anna on YouTube. We were recommended that if you do not palletize our goods and just keep the individual boxes for pickup, then let the freight forwarder manage putting it on pallets is actually cheaper. Is this true, and is it okay to do? Because essentially the question is, when do you palletize the goods for the best rates?
Yeah, so that can be tricky sometimes because palletization will always be cheaper at origin. But if speaking in terms of a container, you will want to maximize the space in your container. So we would recommend to floor load that to, take as much space as you can. We can definitely palletize at destination at our warehouses if it needs to be palletized prior to delivery. So it really depends on if you want to save on money at destination and you want to maximize that container space. Also, if you have fragile goods, you're going to want to palletize at origin because you want to minimize any damage during transit.
Yeah. So think about like glass or electronics. That's when you want to palletize at origin. And then, for me, as a default, I would say, if it's not fragile, your freight forwarder can palletize it in the United States. And the reason I think that's the best option is that, one, we're going to do it according to Amazon rules and regulations, where sometimes like suppliers, won't adhere to that. And then if that happens, then we basically have to undo all their work and redo it ourselves. And then two, it's going to be cheaper if we do it on like kind of like the transit shipping costs, because shipping cost is really based on two things: the distance that you have to go and the weight. And so if you're palletizing in China, those pallets, weigh, let's say like 40 pounds each. That's going to add to your shipping costs. So as a general rule of thumb, I would only palletize in China if your goods are fragile, like glass or electronics.
If they're palletized in, this is actually one of my questions. I've never palletized like in China before. I always just ship like the full, unpalletized or loose boxes. Do they have to be like on plastic pallets or something? Isn't there some kind of rule around that, or they have to be treated wood, or what's the deal with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, there are specific rules, and there are suppliers that can do it. They just have to be savvy, because sometimes they will use, the plastic is cheaper, and sometimes suppliers will use it, but that's not in line with Amazon's terms of service.
Oh,
And
really?
so we have to redo it. Yeah, so the plastic is cheaper, but it doesn't follow Amazon, so we'd have to do it and then recharge you, and you're basically paying twice. So it's very like the 80-20 rule is that you're going to palletize in the United States. If you're on the fence, just add it in a comment when you submit the quote, and we can provide further guidance on your specific scenario.
Okay, so they can palletize on like normal wooden pallets of whatever they choose. I thought there was like some kind of weird rule with the wood that they can only use certain types, or did I make that up?
No, there's that too.
Okay.
There's certain types of wood. It has to be fumigated and stuff like that. So there's that as well.
Cool. All right. Is it common to ship items that total over 200 kilograms? Chris V, when we say like over 200 kilograms, we're talking about the weight of the entire shipment. So the answer to that would be yes, certainly. For example, like if we're ordering 1,000 of our keyboard trays, those things probably average 2 kilograms a pop. So you're talking about like 2,000 kilograms for that shipment. So the answer to that is yes. Epic Crazy Life on YouTube says, is shipping via sea freight from China to the US, or when shipping, does each carton have to be marked with made in China, or what information does each carton have to have? I don't know if you guys know the rules around that, but do you want to just like speak about container marks in general?
Yeah. So in terms of labeling your cartons, we would, if you're shipping with Flexport, we'd require like the Flex ID just so that it's easy for us to identify it when we receive it. Also, the made in China, any SKU numbers to identify the cargo inside, net weight, gross weight, anything else, Mike?
Those are the main ones. Yeah, just like the basic information. So like the SKU, the gross weight, which is the total weight, the net weight, which is the weight minus the packaging. You definitely want to have where it's made in China. Typically that's got to be on your unit labels as well. Just that basic information helps us. There's not like hard and fast rules that you have to follow, and if you don't get the carton markings right, then there's problems. But you just want to be able to make it so it's identified. So if a label falls off in transit, we're able to look at that carton and kind of know what's in there and relabel it.
Great. Anthony on YouTube asks, do you offer insurance included in your price, or is that optional? He said, I remember you mentioning on Tuesday it was super cheap to get insurance. You want to speak about insurance real quick?
Yeah, so it's 0.4% of the total insured amount. So that's 0.4%. So it's less than 0.5%. So if you're thinking you're shipping $5,000 worth of goods, that's going to be $20 to insure. As far as being included on the quote, it's not, because at that point we don't have the information like how much you paid your supplier, for example. So we don't know what the total would be. So that would be a cost that would be later on your invoice, if that makes sense.
And just to clarify there, though, they can purchase it through Flexport if they decide to use you guys. They don't have to find their own third party, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we include it automatically and require it with every shipment, especially for new sellers. It's, a lot of hands touch the goods. It's just smart. And that way, if anything happens on the off chance, you're covered.
Cool. Let's see here. So a question. Okay, yeah. Are you guys familiar with anti-dumping duties?
Yes.
Do you want to just maybe, there was a couple questions about this. Could you just speak real quickly about like what those would be, and if a freight forwarder like Flexport could help the customer identify if their product is, we'll call it penalized with anti-dumping duties?
Yeah, so those are, they're put in place to, on certain products that the United States feels are just coming in high quantities, and they kind of want to curb that. So it kind of depends on the type of product that you're bringing in. It's more rare than not. Like if you take the tariffs, for example, that's hitting just a ton of products, where these is more going to be on like iron or aluminum, for example. So when you're working with Flexport, in the near future, we will be rolling out, customs consultation to really do a deep dive to say, hey, like maybe this is affected by FDA or has ADD. But really what happens with our process is that after you book a shipment, then you get assigned a customs broker who's going to work with you and look at your product, get your HTS code, and let you know of any other thing that they see with your product.
Cool. Another question on YouTube: at what stage should you contact your freight forwarder? They said after you pay your 30% deposit to your manufacturer, after the whole shipment is produced and paid. When's the good time for someone to first contact their freight forwarder? I guess both if they don't have a relationship yet with a freight forwarder, and then I guess also if they already have an established relationship with a freight forwarder.
Yes. So the rule is you want to book a shipment with a freight forwarder 7 to 10 days before it's ready. So that's your cargo pickup date. So if you, have not worked with any freight forwarders at all, and you want to kind of speak with some and see which one you connect with the most, you want to, kind of bake that time in before the 7 and 10 days. If so, you make sure you have your freight forwarder, you know who you're going to move forward with. There is some, paperwork and a power of attorney you sign with your freight forwarder as well. Sometimes that can take a day or two, depending on how fast you get that paperwork. So I would say, just reach out at like a minimum 2 weeks then to start trying to find your freight forwarder, and then book that shipment for sure 7 to 10 days before your shipment's ready.
Adding a little bit to that, 2 to 3 weeks would be great right now as we're coming into peak, just because that allows us to time to book the space for your shipment. So just hot tip.
Great. Mike Wild on YouTube said, do you recommend we shop around for insurance, or is it a no-brainer just use Flexport? Mike, I've always just used Flexport insurance. It sounds like they actually required anyway, but for like 0.4%, is it worth your time and hassle to maybe save like a basis point or something? I don't know. It's not to me. So those are my thoughts on it. Someone else asked, like, when you quote a price to them, are the duties and bond fees included in that like initial quote price that you would give to them?
No, so that will be added until the cargo clears customs, just because we don't have those rates at the beginning, since we don't know what HTS codes those goods will have, and they haven't cleared customs, so we don't really know those. Those will only be added once customs is clear and we share the invoice with you. So not at the forefront where we quote out.
Yeah, and so like the main thing there is that, and this is with any freight forwarder, there's certain expenses or costs that we just won't know until later on in the shipment. And so a good rule of thumb is when you get a quote from a freight forwarder, there's going to be three costs that are not included. One is what Carolina talked about, the duties. Number two is going to be the final trucking from the warehouse in the United States to Amazon. Because as you remember, we dispatch that from Amazon. It's Amazon doing that work. They're going to actually bill you in Amazon Seller Central, and it's going to come out of your account there. So that's the second one. The great thing is, as you're creating your shipment plan, you can see what those costs are going to be by entering in the current information. And we went over in our episode as well how to enter in the pallet information as well. You kind of want to get an estimate. And then the last ones are going to be what we were just talking about too, insurance. Those are the three major things that are not included that you should be thinking about once you get your quote to know your all-in cost.
What's the best way for for someone to estimate what duties they would be charged or what duties they're going to have to pay? Is there a good way to do it?
Yeah, so we have on our website, I mean, like I say this, first, I want to preface it with, it's not final until you've worked with a customs broker and they've really looked at your product in depth to understand your product and what the code is. But if you're looking to just, kind of look and see what you think it may be, we do have a duty calculator, which you can start typing in your product and it'll pull up the code and you can see the associated duty with. And that's on our website.
Cool. Thank you for that. Do you guys only work with Amazon sellers or other industries as well?
We mix of both. So it's not just Amazon. We have smaller clients, super large clients. So
yeah. So if you're selling on Shopify and have your own 3PL, totally fine. No matter how you're selling goods, we can move them.
Wait. Do you import goods, the origination, do you ship from other places besides just like China or Hong Kong? The example they gave is Taiwan and Turkey.
Yes, we definitely ship from Taiwan and Turkey.
Oh. India's a big one too.
Yeah.
All right. Yoan on YouTube says, do we have to deal with a company like DHL and others, or does Flexport take care of everything? So I think you might be kind of getting two different things mixed up here. If you choose to use just like an air courier like DHL or like FedEx, this would be for smaller shipments. The rule of thumb they have is like less than 200 kilograms typically, or that's when we would recommend you use someone like DHL. So when you do that, like you just work with DHL. If your shipment is larger than 200 kilograms, and that's when it's best to use a freight forwarder, then you just work with your freight forwarder. You don't have to like work with the freight forwarder and the shipping service they use. That's like kind of the point of using a freight forwarder. They handle all those logistics for you guys.
Yep.
Venturous Human asks, what about shipping half by air for speed and half by sea? Can a freight forwarder handle all of this?
Yes, definitely. That would just be two different shipment plans, but we can handle that.
Wait, man, it's getting foggy in Atlanta or something. The clouds rolled in back there.
Just came through.
A storm came through. Yeah. But, no matter how hard it rains or what comes our way, we're going to be here answering questions, All
right. All right. Let's see. I just read a funny question here. My supplier told me they don't do FOB, and he said instead I was an SOB. What does this mean? I think someone's trolling the chat box here.
Well, sometimes those suppliers will say no to a certain shipment term, like FOB. If that's the case, it's okay to use XWorks. That's totally fine. We can support that as well.
Great. All right. Let's see here. We have time for about one or two more questions. Let me see if I can pick a couple good ones that would be most relevant for everybody. All right. Do you guys maybe just want to, I know we've talked about this a few times, and maybe some of these people are new joining us. There's so many questions just around like the difference between different Incoterms. And pretty much everyone's going to see EXW or FOB, that's Ex-Works or free on board. Maybe just explain one more time the difference between these two.
Yeah, so for FOB Incoterms, that means that your supplier will take care of the origin charges. So that's the trucking into the warehouse or the port, exports customs clearance, any document charges at origin, that will be FOB. Ex-Works will mean that you will be taking care of origin charges, freight charges, and destination charges. So just basically think of it as FOB is Ex-Works without origin charges.
Yeah, and then origin just means, the charges of where your supplier is based. So if your supplier's based in China, we all know the supplier is going to manufacture your goods for you. It's basically who's responsible for everything to get it to the port. If it's FOB, that means, your supplier is going to get it to the port. If it's Ex-Works, that means your freight forwarder is going to have to get it to the port. Either way, when you work with a freight forwarder, they're going to be communicating with your supplier to arrange that. So there's not, additional work on your side. The last thing I would add on this awesome topic is that when it is FOB and your supplier is responsible for getting it to the port, they're going to add those costs to your per unit manufacturing costs. So your FOB cost from your supplier should always be a little bit higher than the Ex-Works cost.
Great. For our last question, are you guys familiar with what's typical as far as paying, like when to pay your factory, as opposed to like after they release the telex release or before? Are you familiar with that, or do you want me to take this one?
I'll start,
Okay.
and then I'm sure you'll have something to add. From what we see, what's most typical is that they'll pay, our clients will pay 30% down to get production going. And then they'll pay the balance once the goods have been inspected and the goods have passed that inspection to actually move the goods. That's my experience. What do you see, Greg?
Yeah, so I'd say that is the most common. I've personally had other payment terms where they wanted me to pay 50% up front. I think these were goods that the raw materials were more expensive to purchase. And with the per unit price, payment terms are negotiable, and expect that the better relationship you have with your factory, the better payment terms you can get. So now, for these factories I've been working with for a few years, I don't have to pay the balance until my goods arrive at the port in the US. But this is after I've been ordering goods from them for a couple of years. I've been to China, I've visited them in real life. So, essentially think about it we want to pay as late as possible. They want their money as early as possible. And essentially just you guys kind of work out the difference, right? So, the better relationship you have with them, the better payment terms you can get. And yeah, that's about it. So that wraps up today's AMA. I do have a few announcements real quick to make. The first one is we've decided on the brand name for our product. So if you guys tuned in last week, we had a competition for this, and the winner is Jungle Slider. So this goes in line because for our of course Jungle Scout's our product. Our past 3 product names were Jungle Sticks, Jungle Snugs, and Jungle Slumber, all JS words. So this one's going to be Jungle Sliders. It's a sliding keyboard tray. So congratulations to Steven Dewhurst. You were the first one to put that particular brand name in the comments. And as a result, we're going to give you a gift of Jungle Creations package. So you get all of the Jungle Creations products we've made and a t-shirt. So email us at freedombuilders@junglescout.com. We'll get you hooked up with your prizes. And let's see, I think I have one other thing we'd request from you guys is we'd like you guys to tell us where you're at in your journey. So if you want to drop that in the comments section below, we'd love to figure out where you guys are at in your journey. If you're following along with the $1 Million Case Study, and if so, what part of your journey you're in. And we'll choose a few of those people to give out some more free swag to. And to the $1 Million Case Study Challenge winner, Congratulations to Justin Calvin. Justin, you're this week's winner of the $1 Million Case Study Challenge. You get 2 months access to the web app. Shoot us an email, freedombuilders@junglescout.com, and we'll get you hooked up with your prize. Michael and Carolina, thank you guys very much for coming on, taking an hour out of your day. There's tons and tons of nice comments in the chat box about how helpful you guys have been. I didn't want to read them all because I was trying to continue to answer questions, but there's tons of love in there for you guys, so thank you very much. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you so much. We had a great time.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. See you next time. Bye-bye.